Our keynote speaker, our next keynote speaker is Mr. Sudhir Malhotra, Head After Sales, Renault India. And I welcome you once more to the stage, sir. Please welcome him with a big round of applause.
So thanks, Anita, and very good afternoon, everyone. I'm really thankful to the World Auto Forum team who's given us year after year this forum to deliberate, discuss amongst us certain topics relevant to us and relevant to us as in after sales specifically. So, and on top of it, again, thanks for accommodating me in the post-lunch session because they know that I really love challenges. So, you know, we've heard all the speakers about how in the past things were, and of course their success stories. What I thought was, and what I have been pondering over with me, has been the questions that come to us for our future. We've had certain discussions here as well, some very good discussions. But what has been pondering me is in terms of how things will happen for after sales in future. And there are largely a few things that I want to talk about and take probably an opinion from this audience because I don't have answers to them. But I thought I'll rather, you know, take the benefit of this audience to throw up some ideas and understand what we can do together. So one of the important topics for us is the evolving customer expectations. So Saurabh ended by saying that customer is king, and the king is behaving royally. So, and you know, the thing is that the expectations are changing. They're changing at a pace which we've never seen earlier before. We get, you know, the consumer is expecting a differentiated experience, and the next time when he comes, he expects a notch above. Today, the consumer is impatient. All of us are, as consumers, impatient. And that impatience is being expressed against companies who are not accessible on all channels. We've talked about, you know, the mobile numbers being available to the service advisors, to the consumers. But today, the customer is accessing us and giving us information on all possible media. And if he doesn't find us accessible, he gets even more impatient. So just, you know, a small information about Renault, because at Renault in India, we have made a policy which is to respond to all media, all social media inclusive. And at Facebook, we've got the industry-based response time. Now, the first response to our consumer goes within 10 minutes. The last month, it was 6 minutes. So that takes a lot of our time, investment, and energy. The outcomes are still not very great, but there is a concerted effort to look at how we can respond better to a consumer, how we can respond fast to the consumer. However, as an industry, you know, what has happened and what has been happening is the consumer behavior changes hit us later, and we remain closed in our industry shell. And that's where we need to look out as to what is happening in other industries to understand what will hit us or what is going to hit us in big way. It has hit us in smaller ways, but it might hit us big time in coming months, coming years. We all know of the aggregators in various industries. Food, we have the Swiggies and the Zomatos. And there are hotel aggregators, Oyo rooms. We've got airlines, Make My Trips, etc., etc. Cabs, of course, the Olas, the Ubers. And then we have got the online portals and Flipkarts and Amazons. So what is happening is, if you go into an aggregator business thought, a seller is no more important to the consumer. He doesn't even know. You know, in food industry, he doesn't even know from which kitchen the product is coming. There are today what they call as base kitchens, which are probably in a place where you and I may not even visit. Yet, we are taking food from there. So what I'm saying is the location over a period of time, and this may be over a period of time, may not remain as important as it is today. So the consumer today is not, so if you're listed there, you can sell. If you're not listed, you don't have business, or you have less business. So that's what aggregator does. I don't know who that taxi owner is. I still take that Ola, and I know Ola, and that's it. So the consumer driver, these are driving the consumer behaviors, and these are gonna come to our industry also. They've not come so far, but they will. They're coming in, they're seeping in, but they will. So what is happening is customers are not knowing the sellers, they're not waiting anymore. They're ordering through their smartphones. They're making online payments. They're not making cash payments. They're not making even card payments for that matter. Today it's even UPIs. So they're going beyond. And their deliveries are happening within 24 hours or 48 hours. And if they have a problem, if they have an issue, they want a redressal online. So are we equipped to handle all this? Are we gearing towards that? Probably the answer is not so good today with us, but consumer behavior is moving towards that, has already moved on to that. So while digital is becoming, extremely important, we also at Renault had seen this coming. We have recently launched a My Renault app, which has over 60 plus features, but more importantly, it's the first time an app came in where a consumer can do e-commerce. So he can buy, there are 6 modes of payment available to him on that app. He can buy, transact on that app, and he can buy accessories, he can buy services. And our entire dealer systems are integrated. The next line that we are going to proceed to, and I think Mr. Asija there talked about, I think on the panel it was also discussed that we are not instantaneously taking feedbacks and reacting to it. Even in the JD Power or internal surveys, these surveys give us a number, and the numbers come after a day, a 2 day, a year, 6 months. Whereas we need the feedback direct from the customers to us. We don't want intermediaries in between. So in this app, we're going to very shortly also introduce a direct feedback of the consumer to us, so that we can react on it. We can react on it. So those are the things that are changing, but they're taking a lot of efforts, and of course, all of us are trying to move in that direction, but as I see in other industries, the consumers have already moved on to it. The other trend, which is worth noting, is what we call as self-serving kiosks. You would have seen in countries, of course it's not in India so far, but in McD's if you go, you're making your own orders on the self-serving kiosk. You punch in your order, you go and you take your deliveries. Of course, in airlines, self-check-in is very common since days. So is, in terms of, there are certain hotels who have started self-check-ins. So what does this trend shows? That the consumers want to control everything. They want the controls in their hands. Today, if he has to take an appointment, he has to go through, I don't know what number of exercises. So it's not far off in time that entire controls would rest in the hands of the consumer. There would be no mediators. He doesn't want mediators. Where these hotels, they have self-check-ins, McD's where they've got the self-buying. You don't have a guy asking, kya chahiye? They don't punch in anything. So it's the consumer who's doing it. So it may look very abrupt, disruptive, but probably we may have to move on to a no mediation processes, maybe no service advisors. You remember, there were days when we would hand over the scooters, the cars to the roadside technician because we were directly in touch with him. There's no mediation, there's no mediator. Of course, it won't be as unrefined as that, but what I see is we'll have to cut the flack in between. And every process, we talked about, customer giving us a feedback or customer giving a feedback to the advisor and then advisor giving to manager and then coming to us, and there's a whole lot of delay. Mediators will have to move out. Even the government is working on it, so I think we'll also have to work a lot more onto this. So those are the future trends, and so we are, we also have similar plans in Renault. We are cutting down on the interactions which the service advisor might have to do. We have already prepared an app with the service advisors, which is going to help him explain a lot of things, to have transparency in the system. As Mr. Asija was saying, we lack transparencies, yes, but we're doing those efforts. We're trying to cut down on the time which a consumer is going to have or apply with the service advisors. And finally, I see maybe years down the line, we'll have to take out mediators out of these processes. So apart from evolving consumer behavior, there is a widespread availability of data. The second most important changes that are happening is in data, widespread availability. So customers have all information before they're coming to us. Even even when I go to a doctor, he writes me a prescription, I check on Google, what did he write and what are the side effects, etc., etc. So today, with the data being so cheap, even the entry-level guy at the social pyramid or economic pyramid is now aware of a lot more things than the seller or the service provider. So today, when I go to a service advisor and he's not able to respond to me, he loses my trust. And that's another change that will be hitting our industry and will be hitting shortly, maybe in some midterm, because what is happening is we'll have to have more and more of data analytics with us. So we'll have to understand the data that comes to us. Today also we sit on a lot of data, yet we don't use it. That's another part. But in coming years, the data will become more objective. We'll be more clearer on what data we will have. We'll also have, during these connected cars coming in, we'll also have a lot of data at our disposal. So to delve deeper into this data, we'll also need those skill sets to understand from an after-sales point of view. After sales, as Makhija Sahab was saying, it was some time back repair management, moved on to service management, and it's time, and in times to come, it would go into data analytics, because servicing would become an amalgamation of data points coming out of the connected cars, coming out of the consumer behavior, and that's where we'll apply ourselves to. So I think the time is fast approaching when the analytics becomes more important or most important part of after sales, then the repair and maintenance itself. So profiles of the people are bound to change sometime down the line, which means the skill set requirements will change. Today, if I see when I joined the industry, the skill sets at the advisor levels were so different. Today, they are very different. And tomorrow, they're gonna be absolutely different for the after-sales teams, even inside the organizations. So apart from consumer behavior, evolutions, the technology, the data, the way it's going, the third important part that's happening is on the product technology, and we've talked about it earlier in the earlier sessions about how electric cars, they're buzzing around, there's all the buzz around this, but then there are some fundamental shifts which will happen, definitely happen, towards how consumers will repair their vehicles, will get their vehicles repaired, will buy the parts, will access their services. And these changes will also be pushed and driven by areas of connectivity and purchase. And also, our retailers, our dealers will have to go through a lot of changes when this happens. So, in fact, evolving diagnostics, because the diagnostics are evolving. Earlier, we had those paper manuals. We used to, do a lot of, I myself had, been repairing fuel injection pumps, engines. But the kind of repairs that we used to do earlier to the kind of diagnostics that we do today is amazingly different. So the diagnostics, when they evolve, they'll render our service estimates, the service estimates will be rendered to the customers directly through the diagnostics itself. So the advent of these connected cars, electric cars, they will wipe out most of our specialization in after sales. Which is the knowledge to diagnose. The car itself is going to diagnose. The car itself will tell us what to repair. The car probably will also repair itself. So, the thing is that we will go in a few years, in a decade, okay, maybe, a drastic change in how after sales is going to be. So all this paints a picture of an industry facing significant challenges and opportunities, and there are opportunities. And, when we talk about this, we might see a slowdown in non-organized sector because they'll not be able to compete with the organized sector in case of after sales. And that's where Norway sees a lot of increase. You know, Sanjeev talked about European company. Norway sees a lot of increase in terms of their parts business after electric cars because the unorganized sector moved out. It's only the organized sector which is right now in Norway because of electric cars. So while this is painting a picture where there are significant challenges, I think there are certain big issues which will shake up the industry. So, of course, there is one, the rise of the parts e-commerce, accessories e-commerce. Second, there will definitely be direct selling by the OEMs. It will become more of a norm. Direct selling by suppliers and OEMs. Service aggregation, and that's an area where we'll all have to watch out because a service aggregation of all workshops to all the consumers, all B2B, B2C business has got a very strong opportunity to be aggregated where the suppliers can directly meet the customers. Of course, it will happen through workshops, but those workshops can be anywhere. So we will see a sea change of change in the industry in coming years. And this aggregation would result and can render some of our current models primitive and no more usable. So we'll have to, of course, traverse a lot, ponder over the way we'll have to work, make, of course, our different strategies. We'll make different strategies, no doubt about it. But it's going to be very exciting times in the coming years. The pace of this excitement will also be on the increase. You know, we'll have to, I learn from my children as to what are they doing, and that brings in a lot of scope of improvement in what we are doing today. And I see how primitive we are in our thoughts itself. Just a case, an example, my son is 5 years older to my daughter. He's on Facebook, she is not. She doesn't want to be on Facebook, she's Snapchatting. So those are the things that are changing so widely. What we thought is relevant 5 years back is no more. And that's happening in front of us. So one needs to unlearn and learn to keep one relevant. And I think that is what will keep us more into the industry. Will have to keep us ourselves reinventing. So thank you. Thank you for your patience listening. And if you have any questions or points, most welcome to take them. Sorry.
Being sold every year on electric cars. So what you refer to, and that's where the thought's coming from, is that there's going to be a massive shift in terms of how we do the business and how we learn and unlearn going forward. From an after-sales perspective, you know it that we're going to have a tremendous change in the industry with the advent of EVs and connected cars. My question to you would be, from a skill set perspective, is there any dialogue at any forum that we are actively having with the government to actually start scaling up the skill sets required for people, technicians, diagnostics, all of it, which will come in with the EVs and connected cars? Because we've experienced it. The regular skill trainings that we do are no longer regular when it comes to an EV. So when the Bolt came in, we actually had serious engineers attending to that vehicle rather than our existing technicians. So do you have any thought on that?
In fact, Saurabh, to be very candid, we are still catching up with the current technology. You know, our skill sets, if we see in India, are still not great enough or at a level which would be right for the current technology. So today, the Skill Council, the ASDC, the government are still focusing on inculcating, enhancing the skills required for the current technology, so we are not there. So you're right, we have to, of course, as industry also, have to start preparing for it. Not that this skill will not be required. I may have painted a very drastic, abrupt picture, but there is definitely a period of overlap. But then the skill set for electric cars being very different would definitely have to be there, and they'll have to be in, as we are talking about the infrastructure built up for electric cars, we'll have to build up that skill set and the point is that all these changes happen so fast that once they happen, then we are running behind. And we've always been chasing as an industry the kind of skills that we've required.
Okay, may I supplement?
Yes.
Sunil Chaturvedi.
Yes.
Good to hear from you. And you also mentioned briefly that ASDC and government is doing some work in this area.
Yes.
So I thought this is a very direct question, which is something which we are dealing with day in, day out. I, in my personal capacity as head of ASDC, deal with this issue on a daily basis. Government is extremely concerned with all this transformation that is happening, both on the product technology transformation, electric mobility, shared mobility, and also on the manufacturing side, the Internet of Things and Industry 4.0. Because the issue is that for this population of 125 crore people, auto sector is seen as one of the large employment provider. And if that itself is undergoing this transformation, which is seen to have a negative impact on job creation, this is the perception. So therefore, there is a lot of anxiety about it. But just to supplement what Sudhir just mentioned, it is true that because of the uncertainty about the infrastructure related and the product technology itself, EV I'm talking of, irrespective of what deadline of 100% mobility in moving to electric, likelihood for India is that there will be a, both the IC technology has to improve, BS4 going to 6, etc., and parallelly a lot of work on EV. So which means both at in all the segments, whether it is product development, manufacturing, sales, service, it is like a double track approach that all of us have to take. Coming to the skills part, let me just say briefly that ASDC is actually looking at, trying to look at this whole thing a little ahead, or which actually means that to understand what exactly is required, is it only upskilling, is it completely new skill set? So we have what we call ASDC expert groups. Some of you are actually members of that. And on electric mobility particularly, we have a subgroup within R&D and service side, which is looking at this, where all of you join hands and disseminate information, and some conclusions are emerging. At the moment, by and large, people say it is, multi-skilling and not, absolute sort of deletion of any skill. But I think over the next 6 months to a year, we definitely want to consolidate a lot more of the data. So I also take this opportunity to all of you who would like to join those expert groups to come up and use that platform to help us in concluding what exactly needs to be done. Thank you.
Thanks, Sunil. So thank you very much. Thanks for being a very patient listener. Thank you.